Good morning and welcome. My name is Souhir Mzali and I am Oxford Business Group's Regional Editor for Africa. It's great to be in Nairobi again, and I'm honored to be here today to present you with the results of OBG's first Business Barometer for Kenya. But first, I would like to extend my thanks to everyone present with us here today. I say this because I'm also from the continent and I come to you from Tunisia, where I was raised to believe that we were a reference in hospitality. And then I came to Kenya, and I must admit that it has raised my expectations to a whole other level, so thank you. Since we are here talking about sentiment, I would like to say that it is indeed everything. Whether it's the way we are first received at an airport or a friend's home, sentiment is also everything when it comes to doing business, especially for the private sector. No matter where investors direct their projects, the question that comes to surface is often whether or not entrepreneurs and business people feel confident in their outlook. This is exactly what OBG's Business Barometer is here to serve. Before we unveil our results to you, allow me to give you a brief overview of what it is we do at OBG and how we go about compiling our data for the Business Barometer across all the countries that we cover. OBG has been conducting on-the-ground economic research in emerging markets for more than 2 decades now. Overall, we cover around 40 countries across the world. As many of you know, our research relies on primary source discussions with people like you, the stakeholders in the public sector, in the private sector, but also in civil society. The fact that we have so much exposure and connections across these markets led us to think, well, why not bring more of this accurate and timely information to the public? And this is where the idea of our survey was born. So, how does it work? During our research meetings with executives, we ask them all a standard set of questions, face-to-face, and record their answers anonymously. So it's not a survey conducted over the phone or via email, but rather one that's carried out exclusively and in person by OBG's field staff. The overarching aim of this survey is to gather the opinion of each market's highest-ranking CEOs to help assess business sentiment in a given country at a given time. In compiling our data, we talk to people across all the sectors of the economy. Sorry, I'm going backwards on it. There we go. Sorry. In compiling our data, we talk to people across all the sectors of the economy, with the focus directed primarily towards the private sector. So as you can see from our figures here, 78% of the people we surveyed were from the private sector. Now, as we all know, the development of an autonomous private sector has been an integral part of Kenya's development agenda over the years. And as a result of that, the country's overall economic performance and its capacity to generate employment has become highly contingent on that of its private sector. However, a decline in its ability to access credit over the past couple of years has been highlighted as one of the reasons behind the recent slowdown in Kenya's economic performance. So, as of February 2018, private sector credit growth has reached one of its lowest rates since 2015, slowing to 2.1%. This is said to have been exacerbated by the interest capping rate law introduced in 2016, and which saw interest rates capped at 4 percentage points above the Central Bank of Kenya's benchmark rate. The conclusions we draw from our CEO survey line up with this sentiment. So as you'll come to see on this graph, out of the 136 executives we talked to throughout 2017, 89% of respondents said that the imposed interest rate cap has made it difficult or much more difficult to access credit. So while the move was initially intended to lower the cost of credit and increase access to both individuals and businesses, it seems to have had the opposite effect. The impact of this has been particularly felt amongst smaller borrowers, like SMEs, which form the bulk of Kenya's private sector. So, addressing such challenges in the coming months will be key to unlocking the private sector's potential and allowing it to become a much more dominant engine of growth than it already is. Now, while the credit squeeze did have a significant impact on the country's recent economic performance, OBG's first business barometer for Kenya has revealed that overall business sentiment seems to be robust. Indeed, our findings point to increased optimism for growth prospects in the economy in the coming 12 months, with 95% of the CEOs surveyed saying they were either positive or very positive about their expectations of local business conditions in the coming 12 months. Similarly, 75% say that it is likely or very likely that their company will make a significant capital investment during that same period. Such sentiment is supported by the country's overall economic performance in recent years. If we take GDP growth, for instance, even though 2017 experienced somewhat of a slowdown due to last year's elections and the severe drought that affected agricultural activity, gauging its performance over the past decade paints a stable picture, with growth averaging 5.6% annually according to the World Bank. This kind of stability is crucial for investor confidence, and in the case of Kenya can be attributed in part to the country's domestic reforms of recent years, from devolution to regulations to foster financial inclusion, for example, but also to a number of long-term key advantages. Perhaps one of its key assets is its sizable domestic market and youth population that can help drive productivity and promote economic transformation in the country. It is estimated that more than 60% of Kenya's population is under the age of 24. Another key advantage is its strategic positioning and ongoing investment in infrastructure, which bode well for the future development of the country as an investment destination. And finally, the proportional split of Kenya's GDP means its economy remains relatively diverse compared to its African peers. One in which agriculture continues to play a major role, industry and manufacturing capacities have been expanded, and one where services are rapidly developing. Indeed, when it comes to driving diversification here in Kenya, services are key, and obviously we can't talk about Kenyan services without mentioning the role and share technology and innovation have come to occupy over the past decade. If we look at some of the recent developments, what's being done is really impressive. Perhaps one of the most obvious is the success of M-Pesa over the past decade, and the subsequent ICT-related developments which have earned Kenya the title of the Silicon Savannah. The government's Big Four agenda should also strengthen and drive further diversification of Kenya's economy, with its focus over the next 5 years to develop 4 key pillars that are manufacturing, affordable housing, healthcare, and food security. Recent years in particular have come to show that economic diversification, globally speaking, is crucial to the development of sustainable economic models. So overall, Kenya's long-term fundamentals remain appealing, but also prospects for the immediate term seem promising on the back of better rainfalls in the second half of last year, as well as a recovery in tourist arrivals. In light of this, GDP growth is projected to reach 5.5% according to World Bank estimates. Our projections based on our survey findings also fall within this range, with 73% of respondents forecasting growth of 4 to 6%. That said, the road ahead is not all that smooth, and Kenya is yet to address a number of key challenges to realize its full potential. Among some of the long-term challenges to be addressed is the country's fiscal deficit, which accounted for an estimated 7.2% of GDP in the 2017-2018 financial year. Reducing the size of the informal sector, which accounts for an important share of employment, is another key challenge. And finally, unemployment is high, running at around 11% for the workforce, and even higher among the country's youth population. An additional 9 million more job seekers are expected to enter the market by 2025, and therefore creating the required opportunities to meet this expanding workforce will be crucial for the economic prosperity of the country. While conducting our survey, we asked the CEOs we spoke with to identify the type of skill in greatest need in Kenya, and these were their answers. 40% in leadership, 24% in engineering, and 15% in research and development. As we all know, this is where the private sector in particular can play a major role in helping cover the future needs of the job market, and therefore ensuring it gets to play a much greater role in such a transforming economy as Kenya is crucial to achieving the objectives outlined under its Big Four strategy. To conclude, I would like to say that there is clearly still work to do here in Kenya, but the results of this survey suggest a striking bullishness on the part of the country's chief executives and chairpersons. Moving forward, Kenya's diverse economy certainly forms a solid platform from which the country can generate economic growth. The economy has not been immune to the troubles which have plagued emerging markets in recent years, from low oil prices to a stronger US dollar, but the structural work that has gone on places them in a far better position to face the challenges of global markets head on. And we at OBG continue to believe passionately that these so-called emerging markets are the engine of future global growth. Thank you all for your presence and your attention.